And now Blake Geisler has come out with some of his even newer materials on this this idea of, is it allegory or is it literal? So there's some interesting things going on, and it's nice to see that Geisler mentions that. The problem is, from a classical Christian viewpoint, some of the Christian doctrines to this day are based on allegory and not a literal truth. So, kind of ironic there. And then he has Ochimistic nominalism, Aristotelianism, that's kind of interesting, and then anthropological monism. Now, I want to share, this is on pages 12 and 13 now. I'm just briefly just naming several of the philosophies that Geisler is discussing. But on this anthropological monism, this is a very interesting discussion of what he has to say, and I want to elaborate a little bit on that. Listen to how he defines this. One New Testament scholar from a noted evangelical school wrongly attributed to the New Testament a basically monistic anthropology. Before his institution was fully aware of the devastating consequences of this philosophy on his exegesis, he had denied the physical resurrection of believers, the essential materiality of the resurrection body of Christ, and pronounced Christ's ascension a parable or a visual symbol. On the first point, he wrote, "The believer's resurrection body will come from heaven, not the grave. And certainly dead persons are raised, not impersonal corpses." Because of his admitted monistic anthropology, he was forced to acknowledge, in order to avoid a temporary annihilationism between death and resurrection, that believers received their permanent, albeit spiritual resurrection body at the moment of death, while their physical bodies remained rotting forever in the grave, noting that bodily resurrection at the moment of death is the prerequisite for the resumption of true life after the intervention of death. He even went so far as to say that the resurrection body of Jesus possessed essential immateriality and was non-fleshly. In his own words, he declared, "It will be neither fleshly nor fleshy." Both, of course, deny the essential and continuous materiality of the incarnate Christ, both before and after the resurrection, which has been part of Orthodox Christianity from New Testament times. He's speaking of Murray Harris, the former professor at the Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. It's very interesting that under continued criticism from others and pressure from within his own school, he expressed regret for calling Christ's resurrection body immaterial. Now, we Mormons are not allowed to be Christians because we have the wrong Jesus? And yet Christians seem to be adapting philosophical systems that actually cause them to deny the resurrection of Christ? I think Geisler's concern about the problems of philosophy are to be taken quite seriously if this is what philosophy is causing the Christians to do, and of course it is, and yet we LDS are denied the term Christian, denied to be Christians because we supposedly have the different Jesus. Well, now, let's make it perfectly clear right now. We LDS are the ones who tout the materiality of God, that is, Christ who was resurrected, stronger than any evangelical Christian ever wishes to. So how can we be excluded from the rubric Christianity is utterly beyond me. It's very interesting, isn't it? Now, another aspect that Geisler focuses on after he names several different philosophies that he is finding troublesome with Christian thought within his own evangelical Christian movement, he gives some ideas on what evangelical Christians should be doing as far as when they write and what they're doing in their research and their understanding. Avoid the desire to become a famous scholar. Now this is page 15 that I'm on now. I'll go through pages 15, 16, 17. He says, avoid the temptation to become a famous scholar. Now that's interesting, because that's what 99% of the anti-Mormons apparently want to try to do, is become famous scholars. Another one is avoid the temptation to be unique, and that shoots Ed Decker all out of the water there. He tries so hard to be unique that he comes up with some of the loudest guffawing gaffes that one can possibly imagine. It's just, his material is downright ludicrous in so many respects, and I do believe most people have recognized that now. His arguments are just atrocious. He's a nice guy, but his arguments are terrible. Him and Jim Spencer. Do not dance on the edges. Now this is an interesting thing. Do not dance on the edges. My next bit of advice for evangelical exegetes is to avoid dancing on the edges. Do not see how far the borders of evangelicalism can be stretched to accommodate the latest scholarly fad. Well, that's exactly what the anti-Mormons do, however, with DNA research, and it used to be the Bering Strait theory of the Book of Mormon, and then geography, and now it's DNA research, and 19th century parallels. They're constantly bringing out as stretching things as far as they can to try to get anything they can find on Mormonism. And of course the idea is to exclude Mormonism from Christianity because we have different doctrines, so to speak. Do not flirt with the latest critical methodology. Now that's an interesting bit of advice. Do not flirt with the latest critical methodology. Some of our own ETS members have been caught prey in this trap. It would appear that Grant Osborne temporarily fell prey to this temptation when he claimed that Matthew expanded on Jesus' supposedly original statement to baptize in his, that is, in Jesus' name, turning it into the Trinitarian formula recorded in Matthew 28:18 through 20. Now, did you catch that? This guy is dancing on the edges because he is reading a Trinitarian formula back onto the New Testament. At least that's how I'm reading Geisler. And this is the doctrine that's supposed to exclude Mormonism because it's absolutely everywhere in the Bible. Well, Norman Geisler says that's dancing on the edges as far as that goes, and you're not supposed to do that. That's kind of an interesting admission on his part, in my opinion. Then on page 17, he goes to another point. He says, do not allow morality to determine methodology. Ah, that's interesting. One of our respected members, Henry Krabbendam, said it boldly and bluntly when he pointed out that when one departs from the faith by adopting a wrong methodology, it is usually for one of two reasons. First, it is possible that an apostate methodology arises from an apostate heart. Second, it is possible that an apostate methodology, to a greater or lesser extent, has slipped into the thinking of a man who is otherwise committed to Christ. Now see, he's admitting there is possibly apostate methodologies by adopting philosophy. Now that's exactly what the early Christians did. They adopted the philosophy of the Trinitarianism. I think this is fascinating. If it can happen now, it certainly could happen then, and we proclaim that it